A long day of deliberation has ended without a verdict. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our continuing special coverage of the Sean Grayson murder trial. The jury wrapped up for the day just after 6 this evening here. The morning began with closing arguments from both sides here. The jury headed out to make its decision around noon today. We'll dig into what happened in the courtroom in a moment, but first we'll have a quick recap with Gianna Zhao.
Yeah, that's right. The jury has three options: first-degree murder, second-degree murder, or not guilty, or second-degree murder without premeditation. Now, the prosecutor, Mary Beth Rogers, argued Deputy Grayson was not justified in using deadly force, stating just because he's wearing a uniform doesn't mean he deserves to use deadly force, and urged the first-degree murder conviction. Defense attorney Foltz countered, calling Sonia Massey's death a tragedy, not a crime. He asserted Grayson's use of force was justified, as the deputy believed Massey's action was posed a threat. In rebuttal, prosecutor Millhiser condemned Massey's death as a senseless murder, accusing Grayson of letting emotions dictate his actions. Millhiser urged the jury to trust the video, citing Grayson's alleged command to shoot her in the face and his refusal to use a medical kit, letting Massey bleed to death. Deliberations have begun after intense arguments will continue to follow this story. Outside the Peoria County Courthouse, Gianna Zhao, 25 News.
Thank you, Gianna. And you likely heard the honking there. That was from protesters gathered outside of the courthouse. Now we're going to go over those closing arguments in greater detail. While she hasn't been on camera much today, Liz Lape has been in the courtroom every day of this trial. Here's what she noted in the closing arguments. She said it was a packed courtroom. There were many members of Sonia Massey's family present. Now, as Gianna mentioned, jurors have three options to choose from. They can find Grayson guilty of first-degree murder, which requires intent and premeditation, or they can find him guilty of second-degree murder, which requires intent but is not premeditated, or they can acquit him of the charges. As with all cases in the American criminal justice system, prosecutors bear the burden of proof. And as a reminder, jurors must decide their verdict beyond a reasonable doubt. Sangamon County First Assistant State's Attorney Mary Beth Rogers focused on that difference between first and second degree murder for parts of her closing arguments. First, she heavily criticized Grayson's defense, arguing, quote, just because he's wearing a uniform doesn't mean he deserves to use deadly force, end quote. Now, to Rogers, Massey is not the initial aggressor. Rogers argued Massey's actions indicated she, quote, wanted nothing to do with this. She said at 114 pounds, Massey could not have posed a threat to Grayson. As mentioned, a first-degree murder conviction requires proof that the defendant committed the act in question and that the defendant knew their actions would cause harm and wanted to do so. Now, to Rogers, the footage captures Grayson firing the fatal shot, and she argues his actions beforehand prove premeditation, especially when he said, quote, I'm going to shoot you in the effing face, moments prior to the shooting. He said that in response to, I believe, Massey saying she rebuked him in the name of Jesus, and he was worried he would throw the pot of water at her. Grayson's defense attorney, Daniel Foltz, acknowledged the tragedy of Massey's death, but said the tragedy does not inherently make it a crime. Quote, you cannot let your emotions dictate the outcome of the case, end quote. That's what he told jurors, saying their choice was simple: whether Grayson was allowed to shoot Massey or not by law. Deadly force is only justifiable when it prevents death or extreme harm. Foltz argued that's how it was used, and that jurors should really only consider what Grayson could have known in the 29 seconds between Massey entering the kitchen and him shooting her. Now, Foltz also poked holes in multiple prosecution witness testimonies in an attempt to create that reasonable doubt there. He argues that the officers, sergeants, and others who reviewed this case all looked at it with the assumption that Grayson acted in the wrong. He also pointed out how the deputy who responded to the scene with Grayson changed his report a few months later. And at the end, Foltz told the jurors it is their choice and theirs alone in that room, and that's what we're waiting for here. The jury deliberated for about 6 hours after those closing statements. We know that around 4 in the afternoon, the jurors returned to the courtroom to watch the body camera footage again, but then they wrapped up at around 6:30 for the day. They will return tomorrow at 9 in the morning to continue. We will be there closely watching, so make sure to check our website, 25newsnow.com, get our 25 News app, You'll get a breaking news alert when that verdict comes in. Thank you for joining us.
With love.
Welcome to Delicious.
Yeah.
25 News, your home team.
Introducing tonight's starters for the New York Knicks. At guard, number 11, Jalen Brunson. At the other guard, number 44, Landry Shaman.
Andrew Shaman, Wichita State University.